This is Dr. Milena Anfosso, a researcher at the Harvard Hellenic Studies Institute. Is that correct?
It's called Harvard University Center for Hellenic Studies.
Oh, so Harvard University Center for Hellenic Studies.
Yes.
And we're just going to be talking a little bit about what you do and what you study. So first off, can you give some background about where you studied, where you received your PhD and stuff like that?
Yes. So I started studying ancient languages since I was very young, because in Italy we have an option to study ancient Greek and Latin at 14 years old, so at really high school. So my formation in classics was really early. So I started studying ancient Greek, Latin, ancient Greek literature, ancient Latin literature since I was at high school. And so I mean, after I finished high school, so it was like I had like the full entire best grades. So
Mhm.
it was 100 over 100, which is the maximum in Italy. And then I decided to, take a break because I wasn't really sure about what I wanted. So I studied arts at the Academy of Fine Arts. But I mean, I think it was important in my, in my formation as well, because I could master, ancient iconography, ancient art, and also, photography, which is really useful when you study things related to the past, because you can go to the site, take pictures, and the pictures are good. And then yes, and then yeah, and this was in Milan. So I studied that when I was in Milan at the Accademia di Belle Arti di Brera. Then I started studying ancient studies, let's call it this way. So at the University of Turin. So over there, I did my BA, and I studied mostly everything related to antiquity. So it was, of course, ancient linguistics, ancient history for Rome, for Greece, but also for ancient Anatolia. And concerning ancient languages, I got really interested into a bunch of ancient Germanic languages. So
Okay.
yes, Old Norse, Gothic, and many others. And so my first, let's say, study was my BA thesis, because in Italy we have a thesis, and it was very long, like it was more than 150 pages for
Wow.
kind of good for someone who's doing a BA. And it was about the translation in Gothic of one passage of the Bible, so the
Mhm.
book of Nehemiah, because it's the only fragment that we have in Gothic from the Ancient Testament. And I try to study how Gothic, which is a very concrete language with not a huge literary background, had to express very abstract concepts in his own way, in its own way.
Yeah.
So it was kind of very interesting to see how clocks worked, or I don't know which strategies they were used to render better some concept that didn't really exist before in that
Mhm.
language. So this was kind of cool. And that then led me to two things. So I started studying my master's at La Sorbonne in Paris, where I did a lot of ancient linguistics with very eminent professors, in the field, such as Charles de Lamberterie, Marcus Egetmeyer, and many others. So really, Michel Fruit. So I really had a strong background there. And also I completed my master at University of Turin, where on the other hand, I focused more on the heritage of Calabria, which is the linguistic heritage of Calabria, which is a very interesting region region. Well, my grandma came from that region, but it was really interesting because so there's still a Greek speaking community over there. So because we had Magna Graecia and also the Byzantine Empire, so a lot of domination from the Greeks, and so there are still communities who speak Greek. And so I have this, let's say, I, I have a broad spectrum of Hellenic studies. And finally, I started my PhD in Paris at La Sorbonne in 2014. And I started getting interested into basically contact between ancient Greek and the other Anatolian languages. I started mostly with Phrygian because it was the closest language to Greek among all the other Indo-European languages, and then I expanded a bit more with other Anatolian languages such as Luvian, Hittite for the second millennium before Christ, and then Lycian, Lydian, etc. for the first millennium BC. So yeah, that's it. And so my dissertation was during my PhD. I did 3 years as a visiting researcher at UCLA. So it was great because there I met my mentor, Brent Bine, who basically is my father. I mean, that's how I think of him because he's great. And so yeah, I wrote my dissertation, which is a big study on the sociolinguistic relationship between ancient Greeks and Phrygians. So it's the first time that this problem was approached in this way, and it was really interesting because basically since Greek and Phrygian were the closest language in all the Indo-European world, it was nice to see how these interactions kind of developed through the centuries. So how, you know, at first the Phrygians were kind of the masters of Anatolia, but then they were dominated by other people, and so also their language come to be used less and less, and also they were seen in Greek culture as stereotypically slaves. So it was really nice to see how history and society kind of, you know, forged this new relationship between these two people. So that's it. That's my background.
That is a very broad background. I had no idea you did Gothic as well. So
yes.
Gothic, Germanic languages, Greek, that's a very broad.
Yes. In Indo-European studies, we tend to explore a lot the Indo-European languages in general, and there are so many. It is impossible to master them all, of course. But yeah, for me, it was mostly, of course, Greek, Latin, a bit of Italic languages, of course, Anatolian languages, and a bit of Germanic languages. This was I studied. I mean, there are still so many, and I would like
reached the end, yeah.
But yes.
Well, that is really interesting. That is a lot of things I'm interested in too. I'm very interested in ancient languages. I don't have nearly as impressive a background in it as you are, but that is very interesting that you were able to get such a broad array of languages. So kind of backing up and talking about like the humanities more in general. So the humanities in my way of thinking are a little bit on the decline.
Yeah.
And a lot of people sort of don't look at the study of classics as very useful, which is sad to me because I love the classics. So why do you think that is, and what, in your opinion, do the humanities have to offer?
Well, I think that humanities are on the decline, and the study of classics even more so, because mostly they are perceived as areas of knowledge useless, you know, compared to, for example, hardcore sciences or computer sciences or economics. I mean, you can't really see an automatic, let's say, economic value to that. So like art, for example, or music, you can really make money easily out of them. And also you have to think that exceptional talents are pretty rare. And so for sure, one of the reasons of the unpopularity of the humanities is the lack of security, economic security that they imply. The point is that I think that in our society we need it. I mean, like as we have like a right brain and a left brain, and they have different functions, we need a scientific and technical knowledge on the one hand, and humanities, artistic knowledge, on the other hand, in our society, in order for it to work well. I mean, would you deliberately mutilate your brain because you have two hemispheres? No, you won't do that. And I think that that we shouldn't do it in our societies, because we need both of them. Also, I mean, in general, humanities and study of humanities is associated with beauty, or with elegance in writing, or I don't know. These are very important qualities. You don't really only need an effective communication, but also something pleasant, I assume. And so we all need it. I mean, we need both of this knowledge in our society, I assume.
I think that's a really interesting kind of point, the left brain, right brain thing.
Yeah.
I'm studying neuroscience right now. So I did linguistics and kind of focused linguistics on ancient languages in my bachelor's degree, but I'm doing neuroscience right now. And I think that might be a good way to reach people, to sort of like
Yes.
explain that to people. Yeah.
Yes, I think this is a good way to, let's say, to explain, because otherwise, like, it's kind of I don't know, they lack a concrete example to understand how we work, and how the way we are is a projection in society, actually. So we should think as society as a big individual. So, and as we do have two hemispheres in our brain, society needs them as well.
Yeah, I like the analogy there. So if you had a student in front of you who wanted to study the humanities but didn't think they'd be able to live off of a humanities salary, what would your advice be? What would you say to that person?
Well, the thing is, there's nothing more frustrating, I think, than doing a job that you don't like. So if you're thinking of something that will give you, like, let's say, easy money, but you're not into that, just don't make the wrong choice. I mean, if you think that you can, I don't know, express yourself better, or feel more realized by doing something related to the humanities, just go for it. I mean, also when you're a student, I think that, I mean, luckily there are grants and help of any sort. So this is not, I think, something that would block someone, restrain someone, because if you pursue excellence in every field, then you, of course, you get grants, you get funding, etc. It is true that then your career path won't be as defined, for example, as your friend who studied pharmacy. Like, for sure, he will know that it's gonna do that kind of stuff. You know that when you study humanities, you have to focus more on developing certain skills. And so maybe you won't be talking in your everyday life, in your career, about Shakespeare's Macbeth, for example, but you'll have an articulate vocabulary and an elegant and good writing that will allow you to, I don't know, you will have many doors open for exploring. So a good number of career possibilities that value those skills. So I think that we should focus more on the idea of developing certain skills, rather than thinking of I don't know, a cause effect, like I study A, so I'm gonna do B. I mean, maybe the thing will be more articulate, but for sure, at least you're gonna develop the skills that make you what you are, and make you more, I don't know, and make you better at what you do. That's what I think, honestly.
Okay. I think that makes sense. So the money will be there if you worry about being best at your skills.
Yes, exactly.
And follow what you enjoy, so you can be best at your skills.
Yes, exactly. Because I mean, if you try hard doing something that really you don't like, you'll never be as motivated and as good. That's how it works.
So what do you think humanities departments can do and humanities scholars can do to get people interested in the humanities and show them that importance?
Yes, so this is a tough question in the sense that, unfortunately, what I notice in academia in general is the fact that they don't outreach. Like they should definitely outreach more. Unfortunately, like there is a certain stigma in academia toward, for example, popularizers. Like they're seen as they're not serious researchers or they're not doing their academic job well. But the thing is that if you don't make people know, nor the normal, the general public know what we are doing, like you cannot make them interested in doing that, right? So
Yeah.
I think that like it should be nice for young people to see how historians in for example as in something related to antiquity, I don't know, a Latin or Roman history expert can gives us better keys to understand our present, or for example, how historical linguists can play with language and provide you with good etymologies that make you understand better certain words, or I don't know, classicists sharing ancient pieces of comedy that can make us laugh today as they did like many centuries ago, right? So I think that people they have the idea of the humanities as something very, I don't know, niche or cluster,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
small. But I think that by outreaching, I mean, I don't think that is that correct? Quantistic physics like would have been so fascinated if people
Mhm.
didn't know about it, because there have been many popularizers about it.
Yeah.
So people, if they don't know something exists or they think that it's boring or useless, well, they are not be attracted by that. And also the fact that, in my opinion, we never stress enough the fact that you are developing certain competencies and certain skills. And people always think of the I don't know, the the instantaneously connection between study and job.
Hmm.
Might be a more articulate pattern, but for sure it's gonna you just need to do a bit more of research,
Yeah.
thinking outside the box a bit more. That's what I
So so showing sort of the skills that are involved, not just the direct, cash cow,
Yes,
the direct way to make money. Yeah.
yes, yes.
Okay. And so with your work, so we talked a little bit about how you're showing people sort of what classics is and how that could get them interested in it. What impact do you hope your work will have on the world, on classics, on anything in general?
So, honestly, when I started doing ancient linguistics, I didn't foresee anything of what's happening right now, because I mean, people got really interested in what I'm doing. And also, so many young girls kind of reach out after a few interviews of mine were published in some of the most important Italian newspapers, such as La Repubblica or La Nazione. So they basically told me, you're an example for us because you were able to transform your passion into a job, and you've been able to overcome the limits and of academia, which is always a very conservatist and sexist ambient. So a conservative and sexist ambient. So basically, I didn't really. I mean, when I started, I mean, I was just passionate about a thing, and I did all that I could to be good at it, like because I loved it. And
Yeah.
also, I think that I'll always try, to be very good at what I'm doing. I'm being curious and try to do my best to give my humble contribution to the field of historical linguistics. But also, I always try to reach out, because it's important for also young people to find like a point of reference, someone who can tell them it was tough, it was hard, but I'm here, I'm doing something that I really like. And also I will try to do my best for you to do it too, like to do what I
Mhm.
did, be able to do so. Because I also had many people who reached out telling me, Yeah, unfortunately, because of how tough academia was in terms of prejudice and also like exclusion. I just give up. I could not fulfill my dreams, or pursuing my PhD or whatever. So
Mm,
I think it is very important to give a message that I mean, not everywhere is like that, and also
mm,
that you can fight somehow against it.
mhm.
That's it. So, I mean, I also think that my personality was a bit involved, because I think that there are a lot of colleagues of mine who are very, very, very good at what they do, but they don't have, let's say, my social skills, so they're not really
Mhm.
willing to talk to people, which is a huge limitation, I assume, because if you are only there in your cave doing your own stuff,
Mhm.
you don't try to involve other people, make them interested, it's very bad for the field itself, but also for the humanities in general, I mean, and for
Yeah,
academia in general.
and it's hard to popularize things too, and reach out if you're not using those social skills that you talked
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
Yes.
So I
I
think.
always thought
Oh,
that
wait.
as a professor as well, people should like you as a person before than liking your discipline, because so
Yeah.
many times we don't get interested into a specific subject because the professor or the teacher or whatever wasn't able to touch the right things, the right
Yeah.
point. And so I think that you should do your best to make you feel accepted by students, and then
Mm,
they accept your subject and got passionate about it, I assume.
okay. Yeah, that's another interesting point. I think that goes along really well with what humanities scholars can do to get people interested in humanities too.
Yes.
So in your work, you've talked a little bit about what you do generally, but what do you do day to day? Like what's something that you just do like normally?
So, Researchers Day is not that exciting. At least not if you see me, like you just see me standing basically on my couch, because I don't really like standing here. The desk don't really like it, but on my couch, and I answer to a bunch of emails. Then I just do whatever is my project for that specific time frame. So if I have a deadline or something, and I'm working on I don't know, an article to publish or a presentation to give, I'll just be working on that and do research, which basically implies like reading a lot, learning a lot, writing a lot, and that's it. Yeah, so it's not something that you would I mean, if you put like a camera, like, you
Yeah.
wouldn't be so interested. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure that the lifestyle of a hamster would be for sure more fascinating than
Yeah.
what I do. But then,
So
yes, everything gets in your mind. Like, so even though from the outside you see like a very boring thing, in my head I'm super excited because maybe I'm seeing a new connection, maybe I'm seeing something new, maybe I come up with a gorgeous idea and I'm so excited about it. You don't see on the outside, but in the inside
okay, so be prepared to buckle down, but if you really like the discipline, it works, right? Is that it's very interesting. Is that sort
Yes,
of
I mean, I don't think that it's only for my disciplines. I think that this is what I mean. Oh, I mean, for sure, but well, I assume scientists are in
yeah.
labs, so they have a kind of a more adventurous life. But but I mean, yes, if you are doing stuff in the humanities, mostly reading a lot and reading a lot of sources and also secondary literature, and then coming up with your own ideas, it's the process. So yes.
Okay. So what do you enjoy that you do most?
So basically, you feel like it depends on what the goal of my project is, but mostly what I enjoy the most is the fact that you feel like a treasure hunter. So basically, nothing actually thrills me more than getting further than my predecessors while studying a specific phenomenon. So you really feel like that an adrenaline inducing sensation where you find something really new, like I don't know, when I can come up with a new etymology, or I don't know, with a new explanation, and I have a list of of all the ancient scholars that said something but wasn't completely right, and I can come out with something which is new and great and maybe the definitive one. I mean, in that case I really feel, oh, yes. And also another thing that I like is the fact that when you're very good, like you are invited to conferences. So I am invited to conferences, and so it's fun because like you really feel kind of a rock star. You go there, you are the featured speaker, you kind of rule, and so this is, I think, the most the funniest part, like you worked a lot, but during the day of a conference, it's fun.
Yeah. Just you get to enjoy the fruits of your labor, yeah.
Yes, yes.
So you did talk a little bit about your area of interest. Do you want to give any more information on what specifically you concentrate on? So you've talked about you do historical linguistics. So I did bachelor's in linguistics, but I'm doing more neurolinguistics and computational linguistics now. So what is it specifically that is your area?
So, in my case, so let's say that that historical linguistics is very broad. It's a
Mm-hmm.
super broad label, because you can get you basically, with that term, you intend the fact that you're interested in the diachronic aspect of the language and variation mostly, but you can decline and use it for whatever purposes you might like. So you can focus on specific languages, specific areas of languages. So every one of us has his own, let's say, every one of us has their own preferences in terms of course, historical period or geographic area or family of language. So what we all have in common is the fact that we focus on the diachronic aspect. So the language in development and in contact with other languages. So that's what, let's say, the broadest sense of it. Then for myself personally, so I study, well, as I told you, I have two. Ancient Greek is the base, and
Mm-hmm.
so what I focused more during my PhD and now as a research fellow is mostly ancient Greek in contact with the other ancient languages spoken in ancient Anatolia, so ancient Turkey.
Yeah.
And that means that I can do it like in a very, let's say, let's say, small way. So through a specific word that maybe pass from one language to another, so language contact phenomena and stuff like this, or I can analyze it in a more broad, so in a social linguistic way, as I did, for example, with the Greek and Phrygian interaction. So it is a very, I mean, you have a huge quantity of possibilities, actually, and it really depends on gets you, what you, I don't know, you're curious about something and you say, oh, this is interesting, I want to, deepen this aspect, and you find out that it's really cool, and then you focus specifically on that. In my case, what really interests me is ancient Greek, basically in contact. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I like.
And so in your current research, are you focusing on like a specific etymology, or are you?
So yeah, like for example, yesterday, no, 2 days ago, I presented a paper of mine, like a recent article that I wrote, and that was concerning the etymology of the name of a character in the Iliad. His name is Ascanius, and he was said coming from faraway Ascania. So it was a very complicated thing because we have three eras called Ascanius, two in the Iliad and one in the post-Homeric literature, and
Mhm.
two Lake Ascania. So where does the guy came from actually, and where and how to put together the toponym and the name of the lake and the eponym, so the name of the
Mhm.
hero. And so I came out with an idea that, according to me, was pretty cool. So basically, I reconstructed this Ascanius as an ancient Hittite Ascania, which means Ashka is the name of it's a name that means door, but in the sense of gateway, passageway.
Okay.
So is pertaining to or related to a gate, a passageway, entryway. In what sense? How can you use Ashka, door, for a lake? Doesn't really make any sense. It does, because Hittites considered like the lakes, more specifically, as entrances to the netherworld. So I put together a lot of examples to show how they did it, and why in their cultic practices. And so it makes sense, because since they consider all bodies of water sacred, and in particular due to the characteristic karstic structure of central Anatolia, where water went in and out like from the soil, you can understand that for someone was like, oh, this is kind of a divine connection, and this is like, it separates us, the realm of the living, from the realm of the dead. So an idea of door for a lake is appropriate. And also, the etymology for the word is correct. And then, this Hittite name Ascania was adapted by the Greeks and to their own suffixes, so yos and ya, which were the feminine and the masculine, for the masculine for the hero and the feminine for the lake and the surrounding
Mhm.
region. And that's it. I, of course, it was very more complicated than it, because I explained the phonetic process that led to this
Yeah.
specific name, etc., etc. But I was really excited about it, because it was very controversial etymology. Many people said, this is Phrygian, but it is not Phrygian at all, because it's not attested anywhere.
Mhm.
This is Anatolian, but we don't know exactly from where. Other people said, well, for sure, this is even kind of a Scythian or whatever fantasy etymology they wanted. And so I was happy to come up with this new one, which was plausible and for sure more scientifically
Yeah.
proved. And so it was a success, and I was pretty happy about it. But at the same time, I'm writing a monograph on this time, let's say, the language used by a poet. The poet is Timotheus of Miletus, and he wrote a very interesting poetic compositions called the Persians at the end of the 5th century BCE. And what is really interesting is the usage of language that this poet does. I mean, actually, when they found the papyrus, it was found in 1902 in Abu Zir. Ancient scholars were shocked, because the usage of Greek language that this guy does is extreme, is completely crazy. Like he enjoys a lot inventing
Mhm.
neologism and compounding, and expressing so in a very baroque way what he wants. But because of that, it can give like a lot of satisfaction for the linguist. And so
Mhm.
yeah, basically I started like for the first time from um, from a social linguistic, let's say social linguistic, very broad sense, a passage in this poem where there's a guy who is said to be a Phrygian, who is describing from his own perspective what is going on in the Battle of Salamis, so the Persians against the Greek naval battle in 480 BC, and basically he speaks a very broken Greek. So many other scholars said, that doesn't make any sense. Why so many mistakes? This is horrible. We don't like it. The reason I said, well, it's really interesting because actually is imitating a guy. So a Greek poet is imitating the Greek spoken by a guy who was supposedly a foreign. So this is broken Greek from some region. So let's see what's behind. Let's see to what degree of mimesis we are, if we can actually find something related to the language in content. More specifically with Phrygian, since the guy is said to be a Phrygian, and Lydian, because the region where he comes from is Kelainae, and Kelainae was like, let's say, in the middle of this Phrygian Lydian area of contact. So I found phenomena that could be close to a Phrygian background and phenomena which were close to a Lydian background. And of course, many other scholars could, since they have not my background, in this kind of Anatolian languages, and also they lived before me. So the scientific process was not so advanced maybe at the time, could not come to my same conclusion. And so I was really satisfied about it. And so, yeah, now I'm writing this monograph about these weird usage of language in Timotheus of Miletus, the Persians. So these two things.
That's really interesting. Really interesting confluence of historical linguistics, history, and then like the scientific sort of linguistic process.
Yes.
So that kind of ties into the next question I had. What other disciplines do you interface with? Do you find yourself like using skills or methodology from any other disciplines in what you do?
Well, when you do what I do, is very important to know history, because if you don't know history, you can do a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
So actually, I have a very strong background in history, because when I was at the University of Turin, I studied a lot of Greek history, Roman history, and Anatolian history. So my background in history is very strong, and I use a lot of methodology, analysis of the sources that actually we use in history. But also a very important thing that I do, and was very useful, for example, for a study that I did like 2 years ago, was the analysis of the iconography. So thanks to the fact that I studied also ancient art and history of art, it's very important to contextualize, for example, some inscriptions which are on iconography, but also, even though inscriptions are not there, you have to see to what myth they refer, through which symbols and why. And so that was really useful for a study that I did a few years ago. So this is mostly for the most concrete part. And then of course I use like also sometimes I have to think in terms of neuroscience as well, because like you need to consider how the brain works and how we make some choices in terms of language, because we have specific patterns. So it's basically what is really interesting about what I do is the fact that it's not something like that, but it's like very limited, but it's something that allows me to be very interdisciplinary. And yes.
Okay. I even got neuroscience in there. I like that, because that's what I'm studying right now.
Yes.
So I have written down to ask you what Hellenic studies are. I think you've covered that pretty well up to now, because
Yes.
we've been talking about it in depth. So I'll just move on to my next question. What sources do you enjoy reading? What period of Greek literature is your favorite? What do you like reading?
So Well, I think that every period in Greek literature has its own perks, but I am a fan in general of poetry. So I read a lot of poetry and archaic poetry mostly. So not only the lyrics such as Sappho, but I'm also into iambograph because I love profanities, I love bad words, and I love the expression that they could put into this kind of very um aggressive way of writing. So
Mhm.
Hipponax, for example, or Archilochus, so they expressed like the best in my opinion, because in because like in Greek you have this such a huge variety of things that I mean
Mhm.
I mean you can have like the most subtle description of love in Sappho, but also the most visceral description of hate in
Yeah.
Archilochus, which is great. And so I love it. And also I enjoy a lot tragedy. My favorite writer in tragedy is Aeschylus, and my favorite tragedy is the Agamemnon because it's the darkest and
Mhm.
so full of blood. So yeah, I really enjoyed it a lot. Yeah.
Okay. So talking about how you learned your discipline in a little bit, what does it take to become an expert in historical linguistics, in your opinion?
It takes years of study and hard study. Like, and even now, I don't think that I am anywhere close to know all that I would like to know because it's too much. Like, the more you dig and the more you see how ignorant you are, and how much you would learn to know more languages, or the languages even more in depth. So it really takes like a lot of years of study. So yeah, it's I mean, I don't think honestly that I would be as good as I am if I didn't started studying Greek when I was 14, honestly.
Mhm.
uh
Yeah.
because um because yeah, it really also mastering, there are so as I told you, there are so many things to master. I mean, if you want to reach a super like high level, of course, I mean, if you're just looking for, I mean, it's such a specific field of expertise that you
Mm.
have to be really good at what you do in order to do something
Yeah.
new and being credible. So it's a kind of a huge responsibility, and you have to think that every day you should learn something new or improve somehow. So it really takes a lot of study.
Yeah. That's good. Probably a good bit of advice for every field. Yeah.
Yes,
Tons
for
and down study.
everything, yes, I mean it. They say that to be decent at something, you have to study 20 hours. So 20 hours of study to saying that you can. The 20 hours is the level to be decent at whatever. So you have a basic knowledge of something, but for if you want to become an expert, you need at least 5,000 hours. Like the gap between being kind of being good enough to have a conversation with someone at a dinner about something that you didn't know anything before. You start studying it, let's say a week before, and you get there 20 hours of, let's say, whatever you want to learn. Let's say 20 hours of uh, whatever. Tell me a subject, you can be good at it. I mean, these,
Neuroscience.
yes, you can have a good introduction, and being able to pick here and there. But to become an expert, it's like
Yeah.
5,000. Like,
Yeah.
so, and even when you reach that level, which is basically like an entire, I don't know, 5 years of study, it's not even enough because there's so much that I mean, if you want to cover a broad spectrum of things, like, so yeah, to be in everything, in order to pursue excellence, you have to dedicate yourself entirely to that thing. That's the only way.
So
And
what do you
love
find?
it. because
Yeah.
otherwise you can survive.
Yeah. What do you find the hardest and the easiest things are for students to learn in your
So students, I've noticed that let's start from the thing that they like the most. They love mythology in general. So any kind of, because they're good stories, and then sometimes they're really entertaining. So it's kind of nice to put them in front of an ancient myth, whatever civilization. It might be Greek, it might be Roman, it might be Anatolian, whatever. But they really got into it because they like it. Like it's the story can be entertaining. There might be fun parts. There are parts where they can relate. So and then the goddess are treated like as character in a TV show. So it's kind of really cool. They like it, and they learn and memorize things pretty fast. On the other hand, what is really tough is, of course, the technical part, like the language, the ancient language itself. So unfortunately, like you don't, I mean, they tried all sorts of methods to make students like digest better
Yeah.
the declinations or deflections, the suffixes, whatever. But unfortunately, you can't really get rid of it without studying hard, practicing. Unfortunately, it takes practice. And I always say that unfortunately, like it's like studying, the all your when you started studying guitar, you have a lot of chord. Could you say, is it correct, chords to learn?
Chords,
What's
yeah.
the chords to learn? So you won't start with a very complicated song, but once you've studied hard all your super boring chords, then you can go with your friends and have a nice night on the beach and start and singing all together, and then I don't know, getting to Stairway to Heaven, and maybe I don't know, even become a rock star. But everyone has started from studying those chords. So the same thing for ancient languages. The bases are those declinations. You have to learn. I don't matter how you learn it. If you post it like on your house everywhere, if you make a song out of it, get creative, get whatever you want, but try to learn those declinations.
I was actually a TA for an intro to attic Greek class, and it's surprising how many people think they can get through the first semester without learning the declensions. Yeah.
No, the declension needs to be learned. Like somehow it has to. I don't know how. I mean, like, would you help me that with knowing the chords? No, come on. So it's the same.
Yeah. So what's one of the most common reasons why a student in your experience chooses to study humanities or the classics or historical linguistics?
Well, people, as I told you, like the relationship between money and amount of effort required is not like it's not a straight line. So if you start doing this, if you start studying the humanities, or I don't know, classics, or even more specifically historical linguistics, it's because you like it. It's because you have a passion. I mean, you must be passionate about this stuff because, these are so technical and so hard that if you like it, you can bear all the pain that it is involved. But if you don't like it, it's worthless. Like, in my experience, like the students that I had the chance to meet were very motivated, and they really wanted to learn, and so they were usually pretty good. Then of course you also have exceptions, like people think, yes, it's so fascinating and I'm gonna learn it, let's say playing by ear. Not really. But these are not like the most common situation that I been through. Like
Oh.
I mean, in my experience, I mean, in Italy, for example, since like there's this option of studying ancient Greek and Latin at 14. Usually, this kind of school, in this kind of high school, is always like the more prestigious. So is always, yeah, more prestigious than others. So sometimes it's parents. So parents want them the student. I mean, their son, their
Hmm.
daughter,
Yeah.
to start studying at Liceo Classico, this kind of super hard high school, because it's the most prestigious, and you can get access to very important schools for, of medicine, or
Hmm.
whatever prestigious thing
Yeah.
you might think of. So in that case, they are not motivated, like, no, they
Yeah.
just they just do it because they kind of have to. But since here in the United States, or in France, for example, but mostly in the United States, you start doing it like at university. If you start doing it, unless you do it because studying a foreign language is a requirement, and you got to learn everything, and the only thing that were available were Latin and Greek, unless this is
Yeah.
the worst case scenario, well, you are kind of motivated, so you want to learn and you put some effort in
Yeah. Okay. So if you could, in your profession, in your professional skill set, if you could add 3 new skills to your skill set, what would they be? What do you think would help you the most?
So I've always been very lazy about learning how to use LaTeX, unfortunately. Is
Uh-huh.
that correct, the pronunciation?
I'm not sure what is that?
It is like a coding thing to learn.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
program that allows you to, uh, to write and by coding stuff. So I've always been
Oh.
kind of allergic to coding, and so I've always been lazy about it. So all my colleagues, mostly at UCLA, were really strong with this. I think it's LaTeX, but I'm not sure. It's written LATEX. LaTeX.
Okay. And it's is it specifically linguistics programming or is it?
They use it a lot in math. Like
Oh, okay, yeah.
it's very used in math, and also theoretical linguistics, like a lot.
Okay.
So but I've always and but you can, but it's very powerful. It's a very powerful tool, and you can use it to build amazing bibliographies with reference. You can click here and then it
Hmm.
gets you there. It's like really, really good. But I've always been lazy. So yeah, so if I could add that, I think that I would, but I mean, it's tough and I'm lazy. Then then I would for sure improve my German, because I have a decent level of German, but
Mhm.
unfortunately, historical linguistics in European studies were born in Germany in the 19th century. So it would be way easier for me to get through 100 pages of Wackernagel if my German was like a native. So yes, definitely, I would like to reach the. I mean, that's way more feasible than learning how to code, at least. So I maybe in a let's say in a foreseeable future, I guess. And also well, I think that I have a very low knowledge, very basic knowledge of Arabic, and it's a Semitic language. So
Oh, wonderful.
would like to, to get my Arabic to super nice level, so that I could kind of, getting contact with other Greek, Ottoman context, or I don't know, in southern Italy, for example, there was an Arabic domination, and so there are many words in Calabrian dialect that derive from Arabic. So it would be really good for me if I could like add a non-Indo-European language strong to my to my skill set. These are the things that I would like to do.
Yeah, I studied Arabic in Jordan for a semester. I did several years in the United States first, and I was shocked how many Greek ruins there were in
Yeah,
Jordan. It's
yeah,
all over the place, Greek stuff.
yeah,
And
yes, because of the domination of the Macedonians, Alexander the
mm,
Great, all the Hellenism that spread over there. Yes.
yeah, I it was really fun to I went there and I was expecting to see like Crusader castles, but I really enjoyed the Byzantine like mosaics and stuff. They have all sorts of really well preserved mosaics in Greek mosaics in Oman and thereabouts in that area. It's really,
Oh,
yeah. So Arabic and Greek they go together, even though it doesn't
yes.
necessarily seem
No,
like they should.
exactly. That it would be like a nice thing to do.
Yeah. So if you wrote a non-technical book about your discipline, so like for somebody who's just doesn't know anything about it, what would you cover? What would your
So
topic?
I think, I mean, according to my, I know my ideas of general public. People are very interested in the, for example, in the Egyptian civilization, because, like, there were a lot of curses, and everything is connected to this idea of the nether world and the Book of the Dead. But what is not well known is the fact that Anatolians had a very interesting tradition of curses. And so I studied a lot the Greek and Phrygian curses written on tombs, in order to avoid robberies or
Mhm.
violation of the tombs. And so they were just as effective as the Egyptian ones. And so maybe in order to make the general public get a bit more into these basically under, I mean, if you ask to the random person in the road, oh, do you know the Luvians? They say, no. Do you know the Lydians? No. But they know the Egyptians, right? So
Mhm.
I think that they might be useful, to, since curses are pretty interesting, and we have a lot of very funny curses as well. May your bread be rot, and may your have you, I don't know, die because of diarrhea or whatever. We have like a bunch of very interesting things. But yeah, so basically I would definitely write something like more popularizing book about this kind of theme, like curses, also because we're so aggressive nowadays. I don't know if you see in the internet, people
Yeah.
yell at each other like all day, so yes, that would what I do.
Yeah, a modern guide to cursing based
Yes.
off of the Luvians. Yeah, that's
No, but
really
not the Luvians, but they didn't, but the
yeah.
Lydians, the Lycians, the Phrygians,
Oh
and
yeah.
yes.
Oh, that's a very interesting topic. If you write that book, let me know. I will definitely read it.
Nice.
So how many hours a week do you spend on your job?
So this is a kind of this can vary. Like
Mhm.
it depends on what I have to do. Like if I have a deadline, and of course I'm always procrastinating, I can work like 12 hours per day until work is done. So like for the last conference it was 12 hours per day because I couldn't do less. But if I'm not working on something that have a specific deadline, 4 or 5 hours per day, like an entire afternoon, is kind of enough. It really
Mhm.
depends on what I have to do. The most boring part, of course, is application for funding. Like application for funding are very time consuming and not interesting. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, but this is an important part of my job because I mean, otherwise I could not do research, so
Yeah.
and those are very time consuming. So it really depends according to what I have to do. The worst part is that I really work a lot on weekends as well and on holidays, so I don't really have like
Yeah.
a
Like
real
normal hours, yeah.
a real break. Or if it is, it's like 1 or 2 days where I don't do anything, and then I start doing stuff, even if it's Christmas, because I need to, I have to. There,
Yeah.
yes.
So not necessarily predictable hours.
No.
Yeah. Mm. So with your hobbies, so I'm just trying to get an idea for this interview because a lot of people want to know, okay, so is this the only thing I will ever see or do in my life? Um, are your hobbies related to historical linguistics, totally separate? Is there some crossover or?
So actually not, because I know that there are so many scholars for whom like their hobbies basically is their field of study, and
Mhm.
these are the most productive for sure. Like I wish I was like that. Like I wish I was totally into that, but no, I'm not. So yes, my hobbies and also the people that I used to see are not in academia. Some of them are, but most of them are not. And what I like to do in as hobbies, so I like traveling a lot if it's considered a hobby, and of course taking pictures. I love taking pictures. I don't know, of suggestive places, details, or I don't know, scenic landscapes. Really taking pictures is something. Photography, I really enjoy it. But also I'm a lot into music. Like I started music when I was a child, so above all singing, and so I really music. If without music I could not live. So I listen to a lot of music. I love singing, and have a very broad spectrum of music genre, like from EDM to black metal. So I
Mhm.
really like opera as well. I really enjoy music, and also I write creative writing. I enjoy. As I told you, I love poetry in general. So I read poetry in whatever possible language, and I published my first collection of poetry when I was in my early 20s. So I really wish that I be able to do something similar soon enough. And what else? Well, I like dancing, going to clubs. I like practicing yoga. I'm a normal person. The only thing is that I have a weird job. Yes.
So, when you were a student, what resources were helpful to you, and are those the same ones that you use now?
So I was thinking about it because like things changed so much since when I was a student. Like there was a kind of a digital revolution above all, like also with the COVID times that we're facing. So honestly,
Mhm.
right now, like despite the situation, I think that we have a huge opportunity to put like to get a digital format to many, many, many books, which is great. Because and also
Mhm.
get many, and also promote the open access publications, because it's really important. So it's so important to make resources online available for everyone, and also allowing the libraries can allow the reproduction just for the usage of the students, of course. Don't, but the concentration
Mhm.
of digitalized book, it's the best thing ever. I remember that when I was a student, I have a problem. Like I'm a kind of a hyperactive person, and so when I'm in libraries, I cannot really concentrate. So for me, it was hard. Like I had to photocopy every single thing that I needed in order to bring it back home and study and work at home. So the fact that now, if you are a student, you can just open your computer and get access to something which is already online, is just, for me, it was a dream come true. So honestly, we have I think that with COVID, like we have, of course, a, a, a bad side, but we also have an
Mhm.
opportunity, because we can explore these new ways to spread knowledge, and also make kind of a virtual community. And also the fact that being in person in a library is not as important as it was before. Of course, if you are consulting manuscripts, seeing the manuscript is always the most important thing, and you have to go there. But for secondary literature, like, it's a huge help, honestly.
Mhm.
And I think that we should think more about it as an opportunity rather than a limitation.
Yeah. So, getting resources more publicly and easily available. Yeah.
Yes. Also because, you know, if you had to write an article, and if you like just 10 years ago, you have to go to the different libraries, call for, you know, the library to send you the book. It was terrible. Like right now, on the other hand, like of course I work for Harvard, so Harvard Key is just amazing because everything you want, you get access through your Harvard Key, and for me it's like so cool. And but I mean, so a paper like the one that I presented a few days ago, I wrote it in such a short amount of time that would have been impossible with the new technologies that we have. Yes.
Wow. So like digital library resources too. That's helpful. Yeah.
Yes, that's really cool and really important.
So this has been a really fun interview. I've only got 3 more questions, and they're sort of advice type questions, like for different sorts of people. What advice would you give someone who wants to be a historical linguist?
Okay, so I would say that in general, academia is hard, is competitive. Ancient languages are super complicated, but don't give up. I mean, if you have decided to commit to such a niche field, it's important for you to try to find your own space by, you know, specializing into something that your colleagues are not doing yet, and, you know, kind of take advantage of your own learning experience by improving a bit every day and exploring with curiosity, without prejudice, all the aspects that might be of interest to you in a certain language, or, you know, a certain phenomenon, etc. And so you'll have like new ideas which will come out, and you'll be able to produce new content, which at the end of the day, it's the most important thing for every, you know, scientific research. So at least that's what I did. So I think that a useful advice. Yes.
And what advice would you give someone who's thinking about historical linguistics, but they don't know if that's the right field for them?
So I made a list of the things that you need to become a good historical linguist. So I think that you need a strong proficiency in the ancient language that interests you, then possibly a decent familiarity with the history of the population that spoke them, a good knowledge of general linguistic, a genuine concern for the diachronic aspects of language in general, a good deal of linguistic intuition, and good judgment. And I also said that if you notice that you lack any of those items, or you're not willing to acquire them, then historical linguistics is not the right field for you. But also, I would like to consider this carefully, because you might be the next treasure hunter who will have, I don't know, the opportunity to uncover answers to really important questions. So give it, like, you know, a good deal of thought. But yes, this is the recipe, I assume. And also, you know, like, the good judgment is fundamental, because some people are so abstract that they cannot think of the fact that language is actually spoken by people. And so I mean, I know that you might think of the perfect, the ideal speaker, listener, but unfortunately it's not. That's a kind of a utopia. So you have to think that people are actually speaking, and so good judgment is essential.
Yeah, that's, I think, in all branches of linguistics, I think you could probably say that, because we tend to look at written stuff and assume, you know, it was just always written, you know, even transcripts of things, you know. So how would you assume, or how would you sum up the importance of your field to someone with no background or interest in historical linguistics?
Okay, so that actually many people ask me, why are you putting so much effort into languages or stages of languages that are actually dead, that are not useful anymore in everyday practice? I mean, you cannot really go to Turkey and decide to speak, I don't know, Lydian or Hittite. And honestly, the answer that I always give it's because it's fascinating. Again, we have these two sides which are indivisible. We have like right and left brain, like the need for both hardcore science and the humanities of in our society. So we have this need for a scientific challenge. At least I do have it. So that adrenaline-inducing thrill of discovering something new, getting further than your predecessors. So finding, for example, the new etymology for that word, or I don't know, decoding that ancient inscription that until now was incomprehensible, or even better, cracking an entire undeciphered writing system. I mean, this is like what it is good for you as a scientist. Like you have this goal, and then that's what I call kind of more poetry, like discovering that somehow, like despite space, despite time, we are still the same. Like human beings are just still the same. We still laugh, we still cry for the same thing. We just love and hurt in the just same way. So nothing scared Egyptian pharaohs more than oblivion. And according to me, like studying ancient languages, penetrating ancient texts is like giving voice to these dead civilizations. And in that way, we just redeem them from oblivion. I think that it's what I do every day.
Well, it's been a really, really fun interview. I don't often come across people who have a lot of the same interests in ancient languages as I do. I find I get the same thing, like people are very confused why I might, read and study in ancient languages. So it's very refreshing. Do you have anything else you wanted to say before we turn off the interview or before we end the interview?
I mean, don't consider us as dusty, weird, odd people. Like we are human beings just as you are. And as you can see, we can be even fun, no? So just join the club. Come and study historical linguistics. A bit of promo.
Well, thank you for your time.
No, thanks.
And
Really, thank you for inviting me to this interview. It was great.
yeah, it's always fun to talk to someone with similar interests.